Hello everyone and welcome to another video on this channel. My camera is completely out of focus and completely wrong. Let's fix this real quick. There we go. Hi, how are you guys doing? Sorry that I've been missing for the past couple of days. There's been a couple of personal things that I've been, or I had to take care of this past week, but we're back, and we're back with a Saturday video. And today we're actually going to be working on something really cool. As you guys know, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was released last week. Was it last week? Yeah, it was last Friday, right? And I asked Isaias, my assistant, to do this one right here. And we're gonna have a small little challenge here. I'm gonna see if we can texture this in this sort of like style of Breath of the Wild. So it's gonna be like flat stylized effect. And the challenge is we're gonna try to texture this without actually doing any sort of material. We're only gonna be using color. Now, I'm just going to adjust a couple of things here before we go there. As you can see, the straps right there are not perfectly aligned, so you can just play a little bit there. I mean, it's not, again, the end of the world. So we're just going to grab the whole sword right here. It already has UV, so we're going to go jump straight into texturing. And we're going to export this selection to our assets folder. So let's go real quick here to next to live. And we're going to go to... Yeah, that's the one. We go to assets, and let's create a new folder called Master Sword. There we go. Master Sword. And we're going to jump straight into Substance Painter. File. Whoop. New file. And we're going to create a new element right here. 2K is fine. I think 2K should be more than enough. Let's go for our Master Sword right here. I've been playing the game. I haven't been able to play for a long time. I probably played like 3 or 4 hours. It's really good, guys. If you guys have the Switch, you definitely should do it. Or should get it. Let's do a 2K bake right here. We don't have a high poly, but even though we don't have a high poly, that doesn't mean that we can't do a bake, because we can access things such as the curvature, the ambient occlusion, and stuff like that. So as you can see, this immediately is going to make the whole Master Sword look a lot better. Let me jump real quick here, and let's look for the Master Sword to see how it looks in regards to colors. So it's got this like purple color, and of course the metal. So the challenge here is we're actually not going to be using metals. So instead of doing this with a metal that should give us the sort of like metallic look, we're going to fake this out. We're going to build this with only color. So I'm going to press the letter C to jump to the base color of the object. And we're going to be working everything in this layer right here. I'm going to use the fade layers, have some basic things to work with. And let's start with the metal. So if we take a look at the metal, you're going to see that it has this sort of like blue hue to it. So I'm going to add another fill layer. I am going to go to the options here, and I'm going to remove all of the color information, and we're only going to be working with this sort of like blue, like light color right there. Of course, we're going to group this. I'm going to call this blade, and we're going to add a black mask that's only going to be affecting the blade right here. Let me just see. Yeah, even the little things right there. There we go. So as you can see, all of the blade parts of the sword will have this sort of effect. Now, this is actually a technique that's used quite a bit in concept art. I'm not a concept artist, but I know that this is what they call the flat portion of the process, where they create, well, the flat colors first, and then they go over and start adding the lights and the shadows. So now we're going to use a bluish color for like the hilt. So it's something like this, a little more bluish. There we go. Control G, black mask. It's going to be all of these pieces right here. This guy right here. The inner pommel, and this guy right here. Perfect. Just make sure that we have on both sides. Cool. We're going to do another folder here. This is going to be a yellow color. By the way, I've also been working on the next course. The next course is going to be, we're going to be going back to basics. That's going to be a fun one. I've been doing a lot of very cool exercises for you guys, and I think you guys are going to like it. There we go. And then finally, we got this sort of like green color. So let's add another fill layer, another group. And the reason why I'm adding groups is because I want to have control over the elements inside of the groups individually. There we go. Is that the proper green? I think it's a little bit too green. I'm going to desaturate it a little bit more. There we go. So as you can see, we've already have something that looks okay. It's not bad. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. From a color perspective, like if we're doing some sort of like a stylized effect, this could work. Now, let's start with the shadows. I think the shadows are probably one of the most important things. And these shadows are something that are going to affect everything. So I'm going to add a black mask here at the very top so that it affects everything. And we're going to go for a dark color. Now you can see here on the game, the shadow is never like perfectly like dark. So we're gonna go for a deep dark blue color, but we're never gonna go to all the way to the bottom. Now we're gonna add a black mask, and in this black mask, we're gonna add a generator, and we're gonna add a dirt generator, which, as you guys know, will give will create dirt pretty much everywhere, like what we have right here. Look at that. That already looks quite nice, but we definitely want to improve this. So one of the things that I don't like about the dirt generator is the fact that it has this thing called the grunge. And for like general dirt is fine, but for what we're doing here, we really don't want. So I'm going to bring the grunge all the way down. And then I'm going to play a little bit with the dirt amount to give this a little bit more dirt. Something like that. Now, as you guys know me, when I texture, I don't like to have a layer on top just like it is. I always like to blend them. So I'm going to use overlay to blend them a little bit. As you can see, we're going to get some richer colors right there. We can also use a soft light, for instance. I think soft light looks even better. Look at that. That way we don't oversaturate the colors here on the sword, and we get a really nice effect. Now I'm going to show you the trick that's going to give us a sort of like hand-painted style. And I'm going to be adding a filter, and we're going to be adding something called a blur slope. The blur slope is, as you can see right here, a really nice like fractal way to break up the shadows. And as you can see, it gives us pretty much what we're looking for, right? Like this sort of like hand-painted, stylized stroke effect. Now we can make this really intense, or we can make it really low. I'm gonna go like roughly around there. But one of the things that I definitely want to do is I want to divide this a couple more times. So the fractals are going to be a little bit smaller, because I do want to modify that blur slope, but I don't want this to be like overwhelming for the whole thing. So yeah, there we go. That's looking quite nice, I would say. Of course, we can do here, and we can go to the intensity and just lower it a little bit so it's not as intense. Now, keep in mind that when we have the material turned on, we're still going to have something. If you want to see this on the material mode without actually seeing the glossiness that we're getting here, my advice is to create a new layer and create just a roughness layer and bring this roughness all the way to the top. That way, we can still see a little bit of the light affecting the object, but we're not going to be seeing all of the elements that we normally see. So yeah, that's not bad. Getting a nice result right here. So this is just like the beginning of the creation of this sort of like hand-painted texture. Let's go now to the blade itself. You can see that we already have pretty much what we want in regards to the blade, or at least on the like sharp edge. But I would like to darken this part a little bit more. So I'm going to go all the way to the blade. I'm going to create a new layer. It's only going to be a color layer. And we're going to sample the same blue color. We're just going to darken it and maybe saturate it just a tiny bit, something like that. We're going to black mask this, and then we're going to go to face mode, and we're going to select the faces of the element, which is that one right there, and all of this right here. By the way, my assistant, they say yes, he did an excellent job with the modeling, because as you can see here, by having the proper model, we can very quickly select all of the parts that we need for our sword right here. And this is looking quite nice. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, I do want to add a little bit of texture to this area. So one thing that we can do here is we can add another filter actually to this color right here. So first of all, we will need to add a secondary color. So I'm going to add a secondary color here. I'm just literally just going to duplicate this and make it a little bit darker. And then on the fill layer, I'm going to add something like a fill. And let's look for some clouds just to add some noise to the whole thing. There we go. I'm definitely going to bring the contrast up. And I'm going to tile this a little bit more. There we go. We're going to multiply this against the whole thing. So as you can see, this kind of like blurs out, or it makes a messy sort of effect on the whole thing, right? Now what we can do is we can also add another filter here and add this blur slope. And look at that. Change this to overlay. Or again, soft light, I think is going to work a little bit better in this case. Just play a little bit with the intensity. And as you can see, that gives us a very nice texture all over the metal that's going to make our whole sword look, well, a little bit more interesting, right? So yeah, that's a good thing right there, I think. Now let's add some highlights, right? Because of course this is a metal sword, so it should have some highlights or like scratches and stuff like that. So I'm gonna add another fill layer here, and we're gonna remove everything. We're just gonna keep this white color, add a black mask, and we're gonna add a generator. We're gonna add the metal edge wear in this case, which is gonna give us this very nice effect. Now I'm also gonna remove the grunge because I want a really clean generator right here. In this one, I like to set to linear dodge. By the way, if all of these things that I'm mentioning are a little bit too like complicated or you've never heard about generators and stuff like that, make sure to check Skillshare because we have substance courses available there as well.
Hey guys, Abraham here. I just want to remind you guys that we upload all of our courses to Skillshare. Skillshare is this amazing site where you can access a ton of different content to learn, improve, and grow as an artist. We have all of our courses available to watch and learn from right now in Skillshare. You can check the description down here, and Skillshare is offering 1 free month trial to their premium membership. With this membership, you're going to be able to access all of our courses and watch and learn all of the amazing things that we cover with all of the softwares. So, what are you waiting for? Check Skillshare down here below.
There we go. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to the original color. I'm just going to lower it a little bit because I feel like it's becoming a little bit too blurry. Now we might even be able to remove this layer. I'm not sure. Let's go to this mask. I want to see how it looks with the whole. Yeah, as you can see, I'm adding the whole thing so we can get this interesting like fractal texture all over the sword. Now, on the metal edgeware, as you can see, it's a little bit too intense, right? So we're going to use the trick that I normally use for my textures, where we add something like another clouds noise, really increase the contrast here, play a little bit with the balance, and then multiply this so that we only have metal edgeware on a couple of areas, not everywhere. And then, of course, we're going to lower this a little bit to keep it a little bit more, normal. I'm going to go here, I'm going to add another fill layer, and I'm going to look for a scratches. So there's some scratches here that we can use, such as this one right here. That one's a little bit too ugly. Let's try this one. No, this one. There we go. That looks a lot better. And we can play a little. We can, of course, we're gonna do an overlay, not an overlay. Sorry, a multiply as well. In this case, I think it's at the byte. Pass through. There we go. We're gonna use the pass through. Soft light. Multiply should do the trick. If it's not doing the trick, I'm just gonna like literally duplicate this layer, add another black mask. Let's set the fill layer right here. There we go. So we can have separate controls for each of them. And we can do that right there. And as you can see, we get this very, very cool looking effect. I'm going to go to my overlay here. I'm going to darken the shadows a little bit more. So we get the, that extra little touch there on the textures. Now for this guys right here, we can do a similar trick. Like we can try and paint some of the elements, but I actually want to do a little bit more like hand painted approach. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. It's going to be a lighter layer. I'm going to add a black mask, and then I'm going to turn on symmetry. I'm going to manually paint. I don't have my weight come right now. I'm going to manually paint like the highlights that I would expect to see on this areas right here. Okay, so if I expect to see a little bit of a highlight a couple of areas, I'm just going to paint it around. I have to do the same thing on the other side. There we go. This is a very hacky way to do it, by the way. There's, of course, more precise ways to do it. Actually, here, we're going to do it a little bit differently. Okay, let's go a little lighter, because it's supposed to be a highlight. And then we're going to apply the filter. And we're going to apply the blur slope. There we go. We can change this to like 100 or like 10 and play a little bit with the intensity there. I'm going to change this to a linear dodge so that it adds on top of the color. And then again, we can play around with the intensity of the whole thing. As you can see, we get that very, very nice highlight. One of the big advantages about working with, what's the word? With working with hand-painted textures is that if we were to use this on a game, you would only need one map. We don't need normal map, we don't need roughness, we don't need ambient occlusion. Everything's baked into the texture, as you can see right here, and we can get some really, really cool effects. Let's add a metal edgeware to the whole like area right here. So black mask, generator, and we're gonna add a metal edgeware. There we go. And for this one in particular, I actually want to use another generator that's called a light generator. And what the light generator will do is it will only affect certain areas more than others. And by doing this, I can multiply this light generator and have the metal edgeware be affected only like on the top part of the pommel, as you can see right here. So these lower areas are not going to be affected as much. We're actually going to change this to linear dodge as well. And we're going to minimize the intensity a little bit to not have too much effects. Cool. That looks good. Let's go to the cloth real quick. For the cloth, I don't remember if you can see the threads of this thing right there. But I would imagine maybe just a little bit. So I'm going to use this fabric suit on top here. And I'm just going to remove everything except for the color. And we're going to overlay the color. And then we're going to increase the tiling to get a little bit of texture right there. And of course, we can like smooth this out so that we just get a very, very faint texture of cloth going around the pommel right there. Then we're going to go to the gold layer, this one right here. And the gold, we really want this to shine a little bit more. You can see it's one of the the important parts of the whole thing. So I'm going to duplicate this layer again. And then this layer, we're going to go for like a really bright yellow. Black mask. I'm not going to use symmetry. You can see here, it's like the opposite colors or the opposite like rhomboids that we get. So this one right here. And this one right here. It's kind of like reflecting the environment. That's what we're trying to do here. And then we're going to have like a line right here. And another line like right there. And then like if this side of the sword is painted, like we would expect this to be painted as well. And then like maybe like a little bit of a glint in this area. As you can see, that's going to start selling the idea of a reflection, like a painted reflection. Again, we can make this even better if we spend more time on it, but I just want to show you a couple of tricks here that work really, really nicely. We're going to go here to this triangle, and we're going to hit this border right here and this border right here. This line right here, kind of like this line right over here. And of course, we're going to use a filter, blur slope. There we go. Look at that. Make this linear dodge, of course, so that we can really punch the colors, as you can see right there. We're going to change this to 10 and play a little bit with the blur there so that it's not as intense, and bring this down. We don't want to make this super, super shiny. There we go. As you can see, we get a really, really nice effect here. Now, we're not done. We're almost done, but we're not done yet with this like hand-painted approach for the element. First of all, I would definitely like to add a little bit of highlight to the cloth as well. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. We're going to be using a lighter color, black mask, and we need to see where the light is coming from, right? So if the light's coming from the top, then we would expect to see like a highlight doing this sort of like a round thing around the cloth. Let's do a little bit over here. And we're just gonna add a generator. A filter. Add a filter. Blur slope. Let's make this a little bit more intense because I want to have a more intense effect right there. Linear dodge. Oh. Linear dodge, and we bring this down. We go. So you can see we get a really, really nice effect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to like the general layers. We already have a general layer here for the shadow, which is really helping. But I want to add a little bit of a general layer for the light and for the for the light mainly. So we're going to add another layer here. This is going to be a warm like layer like this. I'm going to add a black mask, and we're going to go for a generator, and we're going to do a light generator. And this light generator, I kind of want to have like a side view effect of the light like this. As you can see, it's only going to be affecting, in this case, let's go for the right view. There we go, something like that. And to this, we're going to add the filter. We're going to add the blur slope. So as you can see, this light is hitting the right side of the sword. This is not something that we would use for a game, to be honest, because it would make everything a little bit too dirty. Like the light, even if the sword moves around, the light will always be painted on the same side, which is not exactly what we might want. But when we do this into linear dodge or change this into linear dodge, we can get something really, really interesting. Kind of like a dust. I'm going to bring this below the shadow so that the shadow is affecting the light a little bit more. And you can see it really brings the whole piece like up a little bit more. One thing we could do though, if we do want to use it like a little bit more intensely like this, is we could bring it to the oh my god, I'm getting back to my sneezes now. We can bring it to the top, and then if we go to the light, we can invert the position of this thing so it is hitting on the other side of the sword, and that way it's going to look like it's being lit by both sides, so more like a global illumination sort of thing. I think this could work a little bit better. So as you can see, we're getting the illumination from both sides. And I do want to bring a little bit of extra shadow, because even though we do have shadow, I want to like punch the shadow a little bit more. So we're going to punch it in two ways. First of all, I'm going to do an ambient occlusion pass. So this is going to be just like straight like black color. I'm going to add a black mask, and I'm going to add a fill layer. And if we sample, or we go for our ambient occlusion element right here, we're going to have a mask. However, the mask is inverted, so we need to flip it by adding another levels right here and by inverting this. And now we can play around with the ambient occlusion. As you can see, we can get a really, really cool effect. We can punch or move these levels around to get more or less effect if we want to. And then, of course, we're going to add another filter. This is going to be our blur slope filter. And we're going to change this to like an overlay or something. It's going to be a really low layer. This is going to be good if we want to like just darken everything up a little bit more, just an extra pass right there. And finally, I'm going to add another layer. This is going to be a dark purple layer, because I do want a little bit of color in this shadow. And we're going to use a gradient map. So I'm going to use another generator, and we're going to use something called a position. This one right here. So as you can see, this is coming from the top. I actually want to flip it. So I'm going to flip it so that it's coming from the bottom. And I'm going to be using this to add a sort of like a magic effect. Actually, now that I think of it, it would be cool if we had like this sort of like magic. There we go. Let's do this sort of like magic effect on the tip of the sword. We're going to add a filter, and let's do a blur slope again to create a little bit of filter on this mask. And then I'm going to add a paint layer here. I'm going to use a dirt brush to paint out, so that we only have it on the blade itself. Let's multiply. There we go. And then we should have the blur slope here. There we go. And we're going to change this to a linear dodge. Nice. That looks really cool. Let's go back to the paint. I'm just going to like remove a little bit of effect here and there. We can play with the light. There we go. And that's it. With this, my friends, as you can see, this is the channel, the like diffuse channel. As you can see, there's no other information. We're in the base color channel, and look how nice the sword looks. So we could have a game where there's absolutely no lights. This is what League of Legends does, or something similar to what they do, and we would have amazing looking textures thanks to this process of hand painted effects. So yeah, that's it, guys. I was feeling inspired about the Legend of Zelda, so I wanted to do something cool and show you a couple of tools. Some of you might not know about the blur slope, which is a really, really handy one to give this sort of like effects. It's like fractal elements into our sword. And yeah, as you can see, this is looking quite nice. So if you like the video, please let me know in the comments. Let me know also what other kinds of topics you want me to cover. I'm trying really hard to see if we can have a live stream tomorrow, Sunday. But if not, I promise you, I will see you back on Monday for our weekly live stream, okay? The links to our Discord are down here. The links to the art support Nexus, to the portfolio reviews, like all of our stuff is down here in the description. And again, if you want to support the channel, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll be seeing you back on the next one. Bye-bye.